Everyone. This is Bill Miles, and welcome to this week's Teletown Hall. We're so glad to have everyone joining us again this morning. This week we're celebrating National EMS Week, and I think we should start off with a special shout out to the Fire and Rescue Division for Hilton Head Island, as well as our Bluffton Fire District and also Beaufort County. Our first responders, the EMS teams, and firefighters are on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic, and their efforts and sacrifice have been extraordinary, not only through COVID-19, but well before COVID-19 and each and every day, I'm sure, thereafter. So please take a moment, and when you see a representative, please thank them and honor them for their service. They truly are our heroes, and we're humbled by their continued service to our community. Speaking of heroes, we're heading into Memorial Day weekend. I know that seems hard to believe, but it is. And it's never too early to say thank you to those who gave the ultimate sacrifice. Unfortunately, this year, we won't be able to gather together to pay honor and tribute to those, but please make sure you pay your respects to those who gave all for our ultimate freedom. I'm pleased to report that last week, over 250 businesses took the pledge to put health and safety first as part of the Path Forward Readiness Plan. I'm also pleased to report that the Path Forward Plan has been translated into Flipbook, and it's translated into Spanish, and also you'll be finding it in Flipbook in the English and Spanish versions. So please take a look at that. If you haven't, you can go to the pathforward.org. That's the pathforward.org, and you'll be able to see the fine reports that the task forces have put together. And also, if you haven't taken the pledge yet, we'd certainly encourage you to do so. And all you need to do is email pathforward.org. Again, that's pathforward.org, and we'll be glad to send you the materials that you will need to take the pledge. So please do so. We look forward to seeing that number continuing to grow. It's set to be a busy weekend, and we can certainly see the pent-up demand for travel as we move into the Memorial Day weekend. And I think it's important as our communities start to transition back into business, certainly remembering that the key that our visitors play and what they mean to our economy, what they mean to the overall well-being of our communities. Tourism means jobs. Tourism means putting friends and neighbors back to work. And tourism also means putting food on the table for families. And so please, this weekend, remember that we're glad to see our visitors back, and let's give them a proper welcome. And it's certainly much needed following last month, where we saw a 77% decrease in hotel occupancy. We're starting to see hotel occupancy gradually creep up. Some of our larger resorts are capping their occupancy for the weekend to make sure that there's proper social distancing, and they're able to provide the guest experience that those who visiting Hilton Head Island and Bluffton have come to expect. Visitors often become residents, and tourism is certainly the top driver of real estate. And this morning, we're glad to kick our call off to talk about the impact on the market from COVID-19 and what she has been seeing. And I'm pleased to welcome Jean Beck, who for the last 12 and a half years has been the CEO of the Hilton Head Area Association of Realtors, and which is the second largest trade association in Beaufort County. And we're delighted to have Jean with us. And Jean, welcome to the call.
Great. Thanks very much, Bill. And you are right that tourism does relate directly to our future buyers and real estate as well. So I'm happy to be here to give a report on real estate. It's no surprise. The month of April saw declines in new listings and properties going under contract. Real estate did remain open through March and April, but it certainly was not business as usual. Just like many of you, we had to pivot to a virtual world, virtual showings, and even virtual closings. So in a broad picture of the region, including Beaufort and Jasper counties marketed through the Hilton Head MLS, property under contract was down 11.8% year to date compared to last year, and closed properties remained about at the same pace as 2019. Year to date, the median sales price for single-family homes on Hilton Head Island was up 5.9% to $575,000. Condos and villas are up 5% to $265,000. In Bluffton, the median sales price point was up 9.1% to $325,000. And let's not forget our friends over in Jasper County, where we're starting to really see some momentum in sales as well, and an increased price point up from last year at this time by 24%, with a median price point of $210,000. But I ran some numbers yesterday to see exactly what's happening today. You know, my realtors, as I talked to them this week, I can't believe how many are saying how busy they are, and the phones are ringing off the hook. And some properties are even seeing multiple offers. So in between May 1 and May 19th, now, of course, the month is only half over, on Hilton Head Island, they have seen 97 single-family homes properties go under contract. 27 of those properties range from 1.1 million to 4.1 million. 63 condos and villas under contract. In Bluffton, 130 properties under contract with 12 condos. And in Jasper County right now, they're seeing 22 properties under contract. So given the situation we're in with losing jobs, those are very positive numbers. And going forward, we're optimistic about the future. But it doesn't come without some challenges, particularly in the lending market and in the lending process. So interest rates remain low, certainly at historic lows. But FHA and VA and even the USDA loans are seeing some tightening of the credit scores, as well as debt to ratio income. The jumbo loans, now those are properties that would get lending over $510,000. They're seeing some tightening of their credit scores as well, and an increase in the required down payments. But interesting, during this time, over the last few months, some lenders have suspended their construction loans as well as renovation loans in concerns of supply and labor. But those we're starting to see lifted as well. But inventory in the area really does still continue to remain low, and we've had that for quite some time now. We have about 5 months worth of inventory. So during this time, the South Carolina Supreme Court did rule that virtual closings may take place. If you've seen any of my realtors, many of them, you see them doing closings literally in parking lots for some. Some of them are sitting in the car waiting for their clients to finish up, as they have limited number of people in their offices allowed. But through this time, we're also hoping that we will get some changes in the e-notary. So realtors have been advocating for that for some time now. We're hoping the General Assembly, when they return in September, will escalate that and get that through. And there is some desire through the US Congress as well as to get e-notaries available for a real estate transaction closing. So I also want to share with you, we're just coming off our National Association of Realtors legislative meetings, which normally are held in Washington, D.C. in the month of May. But of course, this year they were held virtually. And kudos to NAR and the tremendous job that they did to pull those meetings off literally in about 4 weeks. Normally, there are about 8,500 attendees in Washington, D.C., but through this virtual platform, there were over 30,000 registered. So we'll see what that means for the future of our conferences going forward. But one of the most interesting sessions I attended that I wanted to share with you was a urban roundtable discussion where the research director of the American Planning Association talked about the impact of the pandemic, what it's having on communities, and what the future lifestyles and desires may be of the consumer. If their speculations pan out, and again, it is speculations, you will start to see a shift from city or downtown living to more suburban lifestyles with larger properties that would include home offices and backyards. Cities and towns with green space and bike paths will be most desirable. And interesting, the downtown will lose its luster because of its social distancing concerns, and shift would be more to a neighborhood cluster of closer to home. There's also speculation that autonomous vehicles will accelerate as the concern with mass transit resonates in the mind of the consumer. Cities and towns and governments will need to innovate and look at zoning ordinances as this impact of the pandemic changes the need and the expectations of residents, as well as commercial real estate. So as I listened to that, my eyebrows raised, and I'm sure many of yours, because it sure sounds like a very desirable location here in the Lowcountry as well. So our market reports are available on our website every month to the public, hhrealtor.com, and they come out around the 15th of every month. But I also encourage anyone who is looking to purchase property or buy property, please use a realtor, because they can provide you a market analysis of your individual property, as well as represent you in a transaction and provide you the information you need to make an informed decision. So Bill, that is my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And on behalf of all our Realtor members, we certainly appreciate everything the Chamber has done and the leadership in our community during this time. It's certainly been a different time. And one last note I really want to make as we start to think about moving forward is to not lose sight of our concerns and the work that all of our organizations have worked together in regarding attainable housing. Let's make sure we don't lose sight in that. That is still going to be a concern and a challenge as we move forward, and let's not lose sight of that as we move forward. So thanks very much, Bill.
Gene, thank you. And certainly that report was encouraging, and I could see the smiles across some of our listeners today, and what you were sharing about what the prospects are going to be looking for. We have a question for you that comes to us from Sam this morning, and Sam is asking that the RBC Heritage is 29 days away until the broadcast coverage starts. How important is that that national and international exposure to the real estate community?
Well, that's such an opportunity for not just for Hilton Head Island, but for the entire state of South Carolina as we broadcast our state and our community across many different channels. So no doubt that is part of our opportunity to let our community shine as well. And the impact of tourism, whether it's the Drive community or whether it is those particular the RBC that gets our international attention. Those are all things that drive people to curiosity. And that's where those calls are coming in that my realtors are saying are ringing off the hook. So I say it's a very big part.
That's great. We'll keep the telephones ringing. And Gene, thanks so much for what you're doing and being with us this morning.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll move on now. We'll talk a little more about that tourism component of it. And as the state of South Carolina and other communities start reopening, we're delighted to have Dwayne Parrish back with us today. And Dwayne, if you'd talk a little bit about how we're looking forward to marketing as the month of June comes around, and then what you're seeing around the state.
Sure, Bill. Thank you. I appreciate the time once again to update everyone, and also want to applaud you and your group for what you do each week of this. First, I would tell you not every community does this, and second, I think you do it better than anyone else around the state. So I'll take just a couple of minutes to run through where we are and where we think we're headed for the near future. So as of yesterday there were 103 hotels closed in the state of South Carolina. This number is down from 155 hotels last week, also down from a high of 575 at its peak. We have identified 10 hotels out of that 103 that took this time for renovations and will be closed beyond July 1st. For the week of May 9th, hotel occupancy for South Carolina was 33.3%, which was up about 3% from the previous week, and also up roughly 3% from the Southeast, which was at 30.5%, and from the United States occupancy, which was 30.1%. So I expect those numbers for the last week, which I will get later today, actually. I expect those numbers to be up another several percentage points, primarily due to this past weekend. Traffic levels around the state, interstate traffic around South Carolina as of yesterday was at 85% of normal levels. Non-interstate traffic around the state is approaching normal levels. There was a large surge of traffic Saturday and Sunday in coastal areas east of Interstate 95 that was the highest it had been in 2 months. Given that, our welcome centers at each of the state's borders where you come in are seeing a steady increase in traffic and more questions about visitation, what people can do and not do. Our state parks had heavy visitation this past weekend. 21 of the 47 reached capacity on Saturday. 15 parks reached capacity on Sunday. We have reopened our retail stores at parks, but playgrounds, picnic shelters, and community buildings remain closed. Swimming pools were allowed to open this past Monday, along with fitness centers and spas and pools. This should help some hotels in regard to other things to do or go other than just the beach. I would look for an announcement later today regarding at 4 o'clock this afternoon. There will be a press conference. I would look for an announcement regarding attractions, athletic fields, and youth sports. As Accelerate South Carolina had its meeting yesterday and made their recommendations. Myrtle Beach had heavy visitation. The entire Grand Strand actually had heavy visitation this past weekend, with some hotels reaching over 80% occupancy. All this was quite the booking window for time. That is the time that people book a reservation has shrunk to, in some cases, as little as 5 to 6 hours. And so this was unexpected through the weekend. And so I'm not sure every hotel was prepared, but nonetheless came pretty heavily through the weekend. So, that the good thing about now versus past weekend is that swimming pools are now open, relieve some of the pressure from the beach. If you think about the Grand Strand, all the hotels along the beach, having pools open will pull some of the pressure from the beach. And I do anticipate that attractions will be allowed to open this weekend with the press conference later today, which would also allow some of the pressure to come off of the beach and spread people out in different parts of the Grand Strand. So our ad campaign for the state actually starts, we have an ad campaign now. It's called Dream Now, Discover Later. That campaign continues through the end of the month. And then as of the 1st of June, we actually go to our what we call our call to action phase. And our call to action phase goes into sort of signifying we're open. I'll just tell you several of the spots. So there's one of cars going down Interstate 95 with the Welcome to South Carolina sign, and where a DOT worker walks over and hangs an open sign on the sign. Just a subtle message of that. We have the empty beach where a lifeguard goes back up and gets into the chair, again signifying we're open. We have one of a greenskeeper who cuts a hole in the green, walks off with a big smile on his face, signifying that we're open. So that's sort of the theme of the campaign. The tagline behind it is "We're ready when you're ready." That will roll out June 1st, which is not far away. Along those same lines, I wanted to talk about what some of the consumer sentiment is in regard to travel out there. And I thought I'd read just a couple of bullet points from Longwoods International, which does a sentiment travel each week. And we've sort of been following this to see what consumer sentiment is. So as of Monday of this week, Americans are still very much divided about welcoming visitors back, with 31% in favor and 45% against. Only about a third of Americans indicate they feel comfortable dining in a restaurant, while almost half say they are not comfortable doing so yet. More travelers are changing their plans from fly destinations to drive destinations. This aligns with our marketing that we do. I just mentioned we have targeted the drive market, which is within a 350-mile radius around South Carolina. We actually include Ohio in that because of the connection to Interstate 77 that feeds into Columbia. And then the last one, the percentage of American travelers who say that the coronavirus has greatly impacted their travel decision in the next 6 months ticked up slightly for the first time in 6 weeks to 60%, while concerns about the economy impacting their travel decisions declined a bit. This reflects the increasing debate and worry over reopening too soon. So with that, we've got, and also in line, as I mentioned, restaurants being opened a couple of weeks ago. We have a commercial that's running now on all in-state television stations, as well as some border stations with Savannah, Augusta, and Charlotte. It is a 30-second spot called The Drum Roll that shows scenes from inside of a restaurant. We have the employees in there are masked and gloved, and to show that restaurants are indeed taking this serious and that they're ready and that they're open. That was done in conjunction with the Department of Agriculture, our agency, PRT, and the South Carolina Restaurant and Lodging Association. Phase 4 of the CARES Act passed last week in the House. Will likely not pass the Senate in its current form. Will be trimmed back in some way, shape, or form. But at some point in the future, there likely will be another stimulus, if you will, from Congress. And then lastly, Darlington Raceway had hosted a NASCAR race Sunday on nationally broadcast on the Fox network. It averaged 6.32 million viewers and was the most watched sporting event since February's Daytona 500, eclipsing many other things that took place between then and the Daytona 500 in February. all that to say, I think there's a sports star group out there that not only wants to watch sports, but also wants to go see those again. But it was certainly a great showcase for South Carolina, and a great showcase for the area around Darlington, the little PD region, and kind of a sort of welcome respite from being cooped up and not being able to watch live sports. And somebody mentioned the PGA just a few moments ago, in the Heritage coming up June 18th. RBC Heritage being in its second event on the PGA Tour. I anticipate high ratings in that as well, and a great time to showcase Hilton Head, South Carolina. Bill, pending any questions, that concludes my report.
Dwayne, thank you. And yes, indeed, it was great to see South Carolina back on national television over the weekend. And we'll get a chance again tonight to see South Carolina on TV with another race at Darlington. And then we look forward to welcoming CBS and the Golf Channel, as you mentioned, to Hilton Head Island. Dwayne, thank you for what you continue to do. And we look forward to talking again with you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
We'll transition now to our local governments, and representing Bluffton is the Bluffton Mayor, Mayor Lisa Salka. Mayor Salka.
Hey,
Couldn't
Bill.
get that out.
I know. It means we haven't seen each other in a while. Anyway, first of all, thank you, Chamber, for my wonderful backdrop. Ariana sent that to us, so nice to have to brag about Bluffton. Two, Dwayne, if you're still on, we would love your clips from your PRT ads, and I think all of us would. I'd love to share them. So if there's some way for our PIO to get that from you, I'd really appreciate it.
I'll be glad. I'm still on. I'll be glad to send those to you.
Great. Well, you got my email, so send it to me, and I'll get it to our guys. We'd love to incorporate it in our social media.
I'll send that to you and to Bill.
Great. And that is what's going on in Bluffton. We are slowly starting back the way we slowly stopped, and we are seeing more people walk. And I told someone the other day, it's really like baby steps. Today you're a little more comfortable, and tomorrow you're a little more comfortable, with the continuation of understanding what we have to do to keep this at bay, and that's wearing masks and social distancing. So I see that in town. We are working really hard with our businesses on extending fees and pulling them in on the Don Ryan Center for anything they need, any questions. And we've had a lot of questions, actually, and maybe someone on this call can help, on unemployment. They are seeing exactly what Senator Graham said was going to happen. They're making more money on unemployment rather than working. And so we've got to get that issue resolved and work with our state leaders on what is the time frame of unemployment, what if they are called back to work, just what is this unemployment benefit during this time. Mask, every time we open something, I tell people, one person wants it open, 1.5 people don't. Governments are really struggling, and we're just being cautious, but it's really hard when we don't have our dog park open. However, we don't have public works crew enough to sanitize it every 15 minutes. And Bluffton is just making their own decisions. So right now, until Mark changes his mind, our dog parks are closed, our public parks are closed, and our public playgrounds are closed, due to just want to make sure they're clean and sanitized and ready to go when they do open. That's really all I have. I know Mark has a little bit going on. We're working on our budget, and it is hard. DMO is the chamber, the Hilton Head Bluffton Chamber, and the amount that Ray came up with dropped almost by 3/4 of what he thinks we're going to get in tax money. So love Dwayne's message. Keep it coming, Dwayne, because in 6 months we need these hotels full. Anyway, that's all I have. Mark, do you have anything?
I do. Good morning, everybody. Bill, thanks again for having us on the call. I've got a few things. Mayor Salk always does a great job teeing it up and explaining mostly what we're doing, but I'll share above and beyond that. We are planning our return to work as well, which has been a very eye-opening and interesting process. We have, as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, we have a town staff task force in place, and they prepared what I believe is the best-in-class reopening plan. We're going to tackle in different phases opening of town hall. Really, our next step is to open buildings. I got off the phone with our director of engineering a few minutes ago, and he's on his way to the building to start putting the protocols in place for cleaning, screening, and floor plan protocols. So we're following all the guidelines, Bill, that your chamber path forward readiness plan had in place. We grabbed a lot of good information from there. We've compared notes with Jeremy and Hilton Head Hospital and how they're treating their office space. And so I think we have a real good plan. The next step is to open the buildings to staff. We'll continue with electronic meetings, though. I've compared notes with some of my colleagues in the state, and some are bringing public meetings back in-house, but a lot are still continuing them electronically. We remain at full strength, with the exception as what Lisa mentioned. The parks are closed, and also our community events are on hold. So we're not holding any 5Ks for Memorial Day or anything like that this year. Our staff continues to serve. It's what we pride ourselves in. I've mentioned to our senior team, this is our time to shine. It's our time to do more. It's our time to stay focused. And I think they're doing a great job. This has challenged us to be more innovative. Definitely, just like everybody listening, we're all thinking of new ways to do the same business. And what this has done for us and for me is it's opened my eyes to the need that 100% of our service to the community through any permitting or licensing be allowed and available electronically. So I would say that we're probably 60 days away. I don't want to back us in a corner. My IT director shared with me last night that he believes by the end of June, he will have 100% of our permits, our applications, I should say, our licenses, and all permitting allowed electronically. So that makes me really proud. Real quick too, our Don Ryan Center for Innovation Hub is at full strength implementing our small business resiliency plan. I know we had that kickoff task force meeting a couple weeks ago. The overarching goal is, to provide and help with business continuity and build community resiliency. So we're staying on point with that. We've met with and assisted several businesses over the past week. So I'm proud to report that folks are calling the number, emailing, talking to Mike Levine and David Nellums and others on that task force. And it's nice to hear that we are helping with some basic questions on how to just simply stay above water right now. But then we're also putting some folks in our center that are truly rethinking their business strategy to grow in this new market. And then it's business as usual for us. I'm proud to report that I presented the fiscal year 21 budget to town council last week. The mayor's correct. This is hard. I'm pleased, though, that I haven't had to propose any furloughs or layoffs. However, I did respond and work with council to propose several strategic budget adjustments as we anticipate and try to deal with these future revenue losses. And then other things, business as usual. Permits are staying steady. Inspections are staying steady. We have close to $10 million of capital projects underway right now. Dwayne, I see Dwayne on the line still. Pleased to report the Calhoun Street dock. The pilings went in this week to redo the Calhoun Street dock. The Wright family property adjacent to it is well underway. We received some bids for a potential public-private partnership for an affordable housing program. Really a high priority of town councils and led by our Affordable Housing Committee Chair, Fred Hamilton, Councilman Fred Hamilton. And so it's back to business. Most of my day for the first couple months was COVID related. And I would say I'm starting to split my time a lot more on regular business and less on COVID, with the exception of getting my workforce and the employees of the town of Bluffton back into the buildings. So with that, that's my update, and I appreciate being on the call.
Mark, thank you. And Mayor Salka, thank you for joining us this morning. Great updates, and appreciate the work you're doing. We'll transition out to the town of Hilton Head Island, and we'll hear first from Mayor John Mccann. Mayor Mccann.
Good morning, Bill, and good morning, everybody. As money flows from the federal government to the state, Everybody talks about infrastructure. We talk about bridges, we talk about roads, we talk about tunnels in some areas along the way. I think part of the infrastructure discussion always should be broadband. It's very, very important in our state, in the time that we just went through with the virus, that every child that's home should have the ability to hook into the state education system through broadband. When the state has the money, this should be one of our primary spends, is to make sure we have the proper broadband going forward. The other thing is, you've seen over the weekend that Hilton Head has some bad behavior. And yes, we have. And the bad behavior is not only the tourists, it's the residents as well. The Sheriff's Department is giving out over 100 tickets for alcohol drinking on the beach over the weekend. We are doing everything we can to let bad behavior go away. Hilton Head Island does not encourage or welcome bad behavior. The other thing is, I want to give a shout out to Paul Westmantle for his Yankee background there, and I appreciate it, Paul, and go Yankees. Steve?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll give you a brief update on last night's town council meeting. The big issue, of course, was beach access. This last weekend, Coligny Beach Park was only open 50% capacity. That didn't mean 50% less people came. It meant that they all found their way into church parking lots, merchant parking lots, and people's driveways and God knows where else. So we're going to try to open this up. The other thing that we have to announce is we're getting the contract signed today, and we will be starting the overflow shuttle that will take folks from the USCB property up on Pope Avenue down to the beach, and that will begin this weekend as well. So we're hoping to provide some relief and handle the crowds. As the mayor touched on, the sheriff's office will be doubling patrols this weekend on the beaches. We welcome you out there, but we want you to behave. Also this weekend begins always Memorial Day weekend. Our rules about dogs on the beach change, and starting Friday, no dogs on the beach between 10 and 5. Part of our problem last weekend was dogs loose, no dogs, and we will be enforcing that. And don't take the dog back to your car and lock it in the car, because that will result in something else that will befall you. So please respect everybody and take good care of your dog. The other things that we did, we will be shifting back to collecting fees at the meters in all of our beach parks. All beach accesses except at Chaplin will be open, but Chaplin remains closed. The other thing we're going to do is opposite Singleton Beach Road. We had a number of folks who were parking in private businesses and private driveways up and down through Singleton. The Crabline Court lot will also be open this week. Other parks remain closed and are targeted at this point for June 1 opening. But we did have some issues last week with keeping up with trash in the restrooms and trash on the beach. And so we'll be working on those things first. And once we get that under control, we'll talk about other parks. We also did some stuff at Shelter Cove, reassigning some money there, reaching some agreements with Shelter Cove Town Center that will help us begin to expand that great pathway network that runs all along the waterfront now behind the new apartment blocks, and tie that back into the main pathway system, and talk about how we extend that down through what was long called the Chaplin Linear Park. And those will begin to come forward. We extended our electronic town council meetings like Bluffton. We will continue to meet electronically for the foreseeable future. We are starting to extend meetings into other boards and committees to DRB, Design Review Board being the first later this week. Council passed a resolution urging citizens to wear face masks for themselves whenever they are out and about. And that's really kind of the big picture there. Like Bluffton, we are working on plans for how we get staff back into town hall, how we begin to open up back town hall. That's all going to be very slow. But we have a careful plan that we're working towards. And as we get closer, more information on that will come out. I thank you for being on the call, and turn it back to you, Bill.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Mayor. Not a question, but just a comment from Maggie. Thank you for reopening Hilton Head Island beaches. So I wanted to share that from Maggie this morning with you. Our next speaker this morning is the chairman of Beaufort County Council, and that's Joe Passman. Mr. Chairman.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Can you hear me all?
We sure do.
Okay, so I'm going to reiterate a whole bunch of things that my colleagues have said about how we're opening up again. So let's talk about that. Yes, we're going to open up our public buildings to the public, but we are going slow as well. We hope to have our public buildings opened up by June the 15th. We're preparing for that gradually and slowly over the next few weeks. We're going to ensure that the public safety is there, but we also want to make sure that our workers are safe. So we're putting the protocols in place now. We're setting up the buildings for social distancing. Should you need to come to the building, you will be required to wear a mask. All of our employees will be wearing masks. So those kinds of buildings will be open by June the 15th. Likewise, we're going to continue to hold our meetings virtual. We're getting used to that. It's working. And one of the things that we've done is we requested from the Department of Revenue modifications to our installment payment program that has been accepted by the Department of Revenue. So individuals can do installment payments again that they were not permitted to do in any amount for their properties. And we do have an app called My Beaufort County. You can find that on your Apple device or your Android device. It allows you to go in, set up your account, link it to your credit card or your checking account, and be able to pay your property taxes, your vehicle taxes online. Therefore, you never have to come to any public building to do that. So those are the positive things that we're doing. Now, we're beginning to do our budget, and like everybody else, this is going to be a tough time. We're projecting as much as a $5 million revenue decrease for fiscal year 21. The primary source of that decrease, obviously, is our A-tax and H-tax. We're expecting as much as a 50% decrease right now. So in putting our budget together, we've had to cut at least $7 million out of requests from the various departments and all of the other entities that are looking for money from Beaufort County. There are only a new few positions that are going to be in this budget, and they're primarily dealing with safety issues. So EMS, ambulances, those kinds of things will be in the budget. On the reopening, we're going to follow all of the governor's orders about reopening. We get phone calls about restaurants, retail organizations, so on and so forth. And, you know, we just reiterate that we're following those protocols. So that's it in a nutshell. We continue to work closely with everyone at doing the best we possibly can to make sure that the county moves on. So thanks for what you guys do. And I look forward to working with everybody as we go forward.
Mr. Chairman, good to see you this morning, and thank you for the Beaufort County report. I was talking to John O'Toole, and for those of you who might not know John, he's the executive director of the Beaufort County Economic Development Group, and John's certainly encouraged by some of the interest that he has seen in Beaufort County from companies outside of here, and I know he will have some good news to share probably fairly soon, and we'll get John on one of our calls to talk about the economic development efforts. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and appreciate what you're doing.
Thanks.
We'll be moving on now to Dr. Michael Katka, and those of you who've been on our calls previously know that he is with DHEC. And Dr. Katka, we look forward to hearing from you this morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and thanks for the opportunity to speak again. So as of yesterday, we are reporting 1,239 new cases of COVID-19 in the past week for the state. This brings the total number of people confirmed to have the disease in South Carolina to 9,056. This includes 19 new cases in Beaufort County for a total of 299 cases for the county. 4 additional cases were reported for Hilton Head zip codes 29928 or 29926, bringing the total for the Hilton Head zip codes to 33. For the Bluffton zip codes 29909 and 29910, there have been 67 cases reported. Unfortunately, today we're also reporting 44 additional deaths related to COVID-19 in the past week. This brings the total number of people who have passed away from the virus in the state to 399. No additional deaths were reported in Beaufort County individuals. So I was asked to talk a little bit about testing today and how it might impact Hilton Head and Bluffton. So overall, our goal for the state is to test 2% of the population each month. So this is about 110,000 South Carolinians that we want to be testing each month to accurately track the disease. So our tracking plan has four key areas. The first is finding new testing sites. The next is doing universal testing of nursing homes, their residents and their staff. We're currently in the process of doing that right now and looking at plans on how to implement that going forward, how we'll do additional testing there. We're also looking at expanding testing to under-resourced minority and rural communities. And the fourth part that I think is more relevant to Beaufort and to Bluffton and Hilton Head is conducting mass testing in urban areas. When we talk about expanding testing, we've talked a lot about the under-resourced areas, but the urban areas are a particular concern because of their size, their population density, and the access to the social venues where people tend to congregate. And of course, as mentioned earlier in the call, the Hilton Head and Bluffton are going to be centers for tourism and commerce, and they're going to host a lot of domestic and international travelers. So we do know that we need to work to increase testing. As we test more, we are going to discover more of the cases. We've known that there were more cases out there than we've been able to identify. So increasing the testing will mean most likely seeing more cases. So when the actual case numbers go up, there are potentially two things happening. You're either better identifying the existing cases, or you're seeing an actual increase in the cases. So we do need to be able to sort that out. So one of the metrics we've added for tracking this is the percent of tests that come back positive each day. So in the past 14 days, that has ranged from about 2.5% to 9% of our tests coming back positive. So when the percent positive is high, it indicates that there isn't enough testing being performed and you're not capturing the disease. You're really only focusing on the more severely ill. When the percent positive is low, it would indicate that there's probably appropriate level of testing going on, that there's more widespread testing in the community, so you're identifying more of the disease and it's more reflective of what's actually happening. So that would seem to be what's happening with our testing right now. We are probably testing at an appropriate level. We do know that there's probably those underserved communities where the testing isn't happening as reliably, and we do need to make sure that we're extending into there. So those are just some of the things I wanted to bring up, and for everyone to be prepared for the possibility of increased number of cases and as we go forward with the testing. So for any latest updates on COVID-19, you can visit our website, scdhec.gov/COVID-19. And if there's any questions, I'll be happy to take those now.
Thank you, Dr. Mccann. We do have a question here from Mel. And Mel is asking about the multi-system inflammatory disease, which is affecting children. Is there anything that you could touch on regarding that? We
sent out that was recently reported by the CDC last week. We sent out information to providers about that. We've also asked that any cases that do occur in the state get reported to us. We haven't had any reports of any of these cases in South Carolina yet.
Okay, and we have another question from you coming to you from Joe, and Joe's asked there with 67 new cases in 29909 and 29910 and 4 new cases in Hilton Head. Why are we pushing to draw more tourists to our area so soon? I don't think that's a question necessarily for you, but a question that is just thrown out there, and so we'll follow up with the appropriate people on that. Dr. Kaka, thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Thank you very much.
Our last 2 speakers will be two that we've heard from before as well, and we're happy to have back with us Fred Green, who's the president and CEO of the South Carolina Bankers Association, as well as William Furman, the senior area manager of SBA. Fred, we'll lead off with you, and then we'll follow with William. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And Bill, I've participated in a number of webinars and phone calls over the last couple of months, and I want to compliment you again on the breadth of topics, the professionalism of what you're doing in Hilton Head for your members. Quite honestly, yours is the best of all the ones I've participated in. The theme today seems to be more about, I'm going to call it the green shoots of opening back up, and I'll just add a little bit to it, just kind of anecdotally. A friend of mine, my counterpart that runs Tennessee Bankers Association, sent me an email this week. He and 15 family members are coming to Hilton Head, vacationing next week, and inquired about some must-see activities while he was there. I introduced him via email to Bill, and I'm sure that those 15 folks will have a great time on Hilton Head, just as others as they start coming back. Just another quick anecdotal comment is the mayor of Columbia on I guess a Thursday evening 5 weeks ago, in effect, shut down all non-essential businesses in Columbia, which is where my office is. Although banks are essential businesses, the association that represents banks aren't. So I walked out of my office 5 weeks ago, walked back in Monday. My desk was just like I left it, and it looked like a time capsule that was 3 years old. Because the stuff I was working on at that point is totally is absolutely useless based on what we've been working on for the last 5-6 weeks. So let me jump into PPP. I mentioned kind of where we are on it last week. There's still about $150 billion in availability for small businesses to apply. The banks are continuing to accept applications and contacting customers that may not have applied. That number has actually grown from where it was last week because of the number of banks that, the number of customers, borrowers that had decided they had other means of capital and they returned their PPP dollars. So 150 billion is still out there. The demand seems to be very low, about $1 billion a day. So I'm not sure what will happen. On that front, I have talked to 4 different sole proprietors that I know that have either done work for me or just bumped into that amazingly had no idea about the PPP program and that they would qualify. I walked them through the high-level process, introduced them to bankers, and all 4 received a PPP loan that would help them survive as their business has basically been cut off. The reason I mention that is if I know 4, there are hundreds, thousands, millions of others out there. So my message this morning is if you have your PPP loan, you know of others like I bumped into, just let them know that it's still available and their dollars are there. Jumping into kind of the next phase of PPP, which is the forgiveness side. Last Friday, the SBA and Treasury issued some preliminary worksheets that would help PPP borrowers and the banks to calculate the amount of forgiveness they would ask for at a very high level. It's basically the information that you would have submitted to receive the loan, number of employees by name, compensation, rent, mortgage, interest, utilities, all the things we've talked about, but it's carried forward during this next period. They're worksheets, and maybe William can kind of tell you where it is. It's on the SBA site. He could give you more insight. The problem with it is now that the worksheets are out there, there's been no guidance in what you do with those worksheets. So my message to everyone on the phone that has PPP loans is to look at those worksheets, begin accumulating the information that would be required on those worksheets. Be patient, wait for the SBA and Treasury to issue the guidance on what you do with those to actually submit the forgiveness request, and that we hope will be issued in the next few days. So Bill, thank you again for letting me participate. You're doing a great service to all of your members on Hilton Head, and again, I'll be happy after William maybe to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Fred. Thank you very much. William, let's hear from you.
Good morning. It's good to be here again. Thanks again for having me. These calls are very good, and honestly, I always enjoy participating as well, just for the other information that is provided. So really, really do appreciate that and appreciate being here. I am really going to echo what Fred said to a large degree, especially as far as PPP goes. We're seeing the downward trend as far as demand for PPP loans go, and it is tapering off, but that does not mean that there aren't businesses out there that need the funding and qualify and are eligible for the funds. So definitely we're still trying to push that message and make sure that everyone knows that funds are available and that they need to apply. I think there was so much talk about the funds running out in just a matter of days that it kind of discouraged some people, and they maybe just kind of gave up before they ever applied, and they just now assume that it's not there. But there is more than ample funds still available in PPP. We are starting to transition into the forgiveness mode. The application for forgiveness did come out. Want to make it clear that businesses cannot actually submit that to lenders quite yet, but the form is there, and it answers some questions and gives a little bit more direction. But SBA is going to provide additional guidance. It doesn't have all the answers. So what I would say is just review the application, stay tuned for more information. And as all things PPP, be prepared for more updates and maybe some modifications to that application. I can foresee that probably coming down the line at some point. As far as economic injury disaster loans go, SBA has pretty well caught up with the advances, which is the forgivable piece of the economic injury disaster loan. So pretty well caught up with that, but there is still a huge backlog for the loan aspect of the EIDL. In South Carolina, there have been 2,973 EIDL loans made for over $276 million. The portal does remain closed to all businesses with the exception of agricultural enterprises. And that is a big question we're getting, when is the portal going to open back up? And we do expect it to reopen for all businesses, but we do not have any kind of time frame on that. I know the Office of Disaster Assistance is still trying to get caught up on all of those applications that they have on hand. So here at SBA, we are continuing to accept and process PPP loans. We're working through the backlog with the EIDL loans, and we're trying to prepare and get ready for the wave of the PPP forgiveness requests that we know are coming, and we'll be working with all the bankers and lenders on that. Just on a brighter note, we are also starting to think and plan about SBA activities and what they're going to look like in the next few months. So it's been quite nice to talk about some other activities, some typical initiatives and functions that SBA does that are not tied to PPP and EIDL. So it's almost like you can see it on the horizon, and we've just got to work to get there. And so with that, kind of concludes what I have, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, William. Appreciate that update. The first question we have comes to us from Jerry. And Jerry's asking, saying, I filed a claim for the disaster loan assistance in March. As of to date, have not been advised if I would receive funds. Any advice you could provide would be helpful.
Yeah, so number one, I guess is hopefully you may have received your advance on that. If you did not receive the advance, then there was probably a problem with the deposit into your account. There was probably a discrepancy or security issue on that advance, so it may not have found its way to your account. That doesn't mean that you're not going to get it. It just means that you will receive that when you receive the offer for your EIDL loan. Now, again, they're still working through a huge backlog there, but I would, if you have not received the advance, I would definitely reach out and call the and I give this number every week. I would call the disaster customer service number, and when you call them, ask them to be elevated to a tier 2 representative. When you go to that tier 2 representative, they have the ability to pull up your EIDL application. So let me give the number. It's 1-800-659-2955. So 800-659-2955.
Thank you, William. And next question comes to us from Linda, and Linda is asking, where do I get the PPP worksheets?
Okay, the application for forgiveness is on and a lot of other information. So this is a really good site to go to. If you just go to the U.S. Treasury homepage, you will see the link there for all of the COVID-19 information. And that form is under a section for borrowers. And you can take a look at that. It is 11 pages long, which surprised me a little bit. It reminds me a lot of a tax form. But it does have complete instructions, and it does answer some questions that I think a lot of people have had, but it does not answer them all.
Okay, next question comes from Joe. What is the website URL to check on the status of EIDL loan processing?
Okay, there is not a website to do that. The only way to check your status on EIDL loan processing is to call the disaster customer service. And again, that number is 1-800-659, or I'm sorry, 1-800-659-2955. And I would ask to speak to a tier 2 representative to get that information.
All right, thank you. Thank you both, William and Fred. We're going to be taking a deeper dive this Thursday at 1 o'clock when Hannah Horn on our team will be hosting, in partnership with SCORE, webinar, which is offering an update on the rules for those who have received their PPP. So please check that out on our chamber social, as well as you'll see in the chat box here, there'll be a place to register for that. It will be at 1 o'clock this Thursday. So that concludes our call. Thank you for joining this week. And as we close, I want to certainly encourage everyone to be safe and take care of your community and take care of each other during this Memorial Day weekend. Please enjoy and have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.